everybody. Today I'm going to explain one of the very important concepts in economics, which is called a gross domestic product, or simply we call it a GDP. And the reason I'm saying it's a very important concept because based on this concept, we classify the ranking of the economies, of different economies over the world. Let me put it in a different way. Uh, all of us know that the United States had the strongest economy in the world. And which country the second economy? China. So China had the second strongest economy in the world. But here's the question. Based on what we classify, China is number two and US is number one. The short answer for this question is it's based on GDP. So this means, I want to put it in a different way. So the country which has the highest GDP will be classified as the strongest economy. So United States had the highest GDP in the world. So consequently, United States had the strongest economy in the world, and China is number two. Okay, so let me explain in more details what do you mean by GDP, how it's measured. So let's start here. So this is the definition of GDP. GDP is the monetary measure of total market value of all final goods and services within a country in 1 year. Okay, so let me split this definition into like small parts, which means, so I'm gonna focus on, this is the first part of the definition, total market value of all final goods and service. The second part is produced within a country. And the last part is in 1 year. Okay, so let's explain the first part, which is total market value of all goods and services, all final goods and services. So this means GDP includes only final products and services. So this means, let's take an example. Let's say Chevy or Ford. So this is an American auto company, right? So if Chevy produce autos here in the United States, so this is an example of final goods and services. So if we add all the final goods and services produced inside the US, so this will give you the GDP, or the gross domestic product. In 1 year, what do you mean by this? So in 1 year, so okay, so in 1 year, so this is in 1 year, so it means only goods in a given year must be included in GDP. So this means if you go to a website, I'm going to write down the website here, so please feel free to Google this website. It's called BEA. If you Google this website, you will be able to find the GDP for United States for the last year, for 2020, and for the last years. So this means there's a GDP for every country every year. So there's a US GDP in 2020, 2019, 2018, and so on. But I want to focus more on what do I mean by produced within a country? What does it mean? So I'm going to give you an example because it's very important to differentiate between two concepts. The first one is GDP, and this is the one which I'm trying to explain now. And the other concept is called GNP. So as you can see, the difference between D and N. So D stands for domestic and N stands for national. Okay, so what's the difference between domestic and national? So domestic, what do we mean by domestic? It means any product, any final goods and service produced within United States. Let's focus on the United States GDP. What does it mean? So let's say, for example, let's take Toyota as an example. Toyota is a Japanese company, but there are many factors like for Toyota in the United States. So this means if Toyota has a factory which is located in the United States to manufacture and produce Toyota cars, so even if it's a Japanese company, but as long as this factory is located inside US, So all the products, all the Toyota cars produced from this particular factory will be considered as a part of US GDP. Okay, so domestic, it doesn't matter like the nationality of the company. It can be Chinese company, it can be Japanese. It doesn't matter like what is the nationality of the company. But as long as this company is located in the United States, so it's going to be part of US GDP. This is the meaning of domestic. What about national? So national here, we focus on the nationality. We don't focus on the domestic. We don't focus on the boundaries of the country. So the nationality of the firm. So this means, let's go back to the example which I just mentioned about the Toyota. So all the products produced by Toyota, which is located in the United States, will be part of US GDP, right? But at the same time, it's going to be part of Japan GNP. It's not going to be counted as part of Japan GDP because this particular fact is not located in Japan, but it's going to be part of Japan GNP. Okay, let me give you another example. Let's say Nike. Nike is an American company, correct? So Nike has a factory in China. Okay, so they take advantage of the cheap labor in China. So there are no minimum wages in China. So anyway, so all the shoes, all the sport clothes which are manufactured in China by Nike, so will be part of what? Can you think about it? So think about this. It's going to be part of which country GDP and which country GNP? Here is the answer. So the shoes which are produced by Nike, again, which is an American company, in China will be part of what? Will be part of China GDP, because now it's domestic because it's produced in China. At the same time, it's going to be part of United States GNP because this is an American company, so it's going to be counted as a part of GNP. Okay, so let me get back to the definition. So that's why I'm focusing more on this part of the definition. So GDP, any final goods and services, textiles, any industry, clothes, shoes, autos, TVs, any goods and services, but they have to be produced within the United States to be part of US GDP. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide, but here I want to, because I want to focus more on the way we measure the GDP. There are two main approaches to measure the GDP. So there's a spending approach and the income approach. And this is what I'm going to explain in the next slide. So as you can see here, so yeah, we don't have to care about this. So we just focus here on this part. So there are two ways to measure GDP: expenditure approach and the income approach. And maybe I'm going to spend more time on the first one, which is the expenditure approach. Okay, so let's see this. How do we measure the GDP using the expenditure approach? This formula, I consider it as one of the most important formulas in macroeconomics. So how do we measure GDP? It's so C stands for consumption here, and I stands for investment, and U stands for the government, and X minus M. So X is the export, and M is the import. Okay, so let me go back here to explain this more. Okay, so any economy includes what? So let me, yeah, here, this page. Okay, so maybe in this graph it looks complicated, but I'll do my best to simplify it. So this graph summarizes what we mean by economy. I can simplify it by this way. So the economy includes three key players. What are the three key players in any economy? Business, so this is business, and consumer, which is you and I, and the government. So these are the three key players in any economy. Okay, let me explain What do you mean by this graph? Okay, let's do this. Let's see what do you mean by these arrows. Okay. So the business, what do you mean by business? Like any business, like Walmart, like Best Buy, Target, any business. So what the business do? So the business pays corporate income taxes to the government. Yes. So the business, any business, pay government tax, pay corporate income taxes. And what about the consumers? All the consumers pay the personal income taxes. Yes, before the RS deadline. So we pay the personal income taxes. Okay. And what else? For the consumer, so we work to get money. We can provide our labor, our effort, our time. Yeah. So let's say I go to work from 8 to 5, and I get a salary because I'm going to work. So I provide labor, or so maybe I have a piece of land, so I can get some money from renting or selling the land. So so land. What else? Capital. So maybe I have 100,000 in my bank and want to invest it by investing in bonds, stocks, or in real estate. And entrepreneurship. So let's say I have an idea, I have an idea, I have a new app, and I can make money from this app. So these are, from my perspective as a consumer, so these are the sources of income I have. And I can provide my labor. Okay, so this is the first one. Land, entrepreneurship, or capital. So these are the four different sources of income which I have. Okay, so if I provide my labor, if I provide my effort, so I get wages, right? If I rent a land or a building, so I get rent. If I have my own business, so I get profit. If, for example, I lend someone, so I get interest, so this is interest. Okay. So, so as I said, we focus here on the expenditure approach of measuring GDP. So consumption, consumer, so this is, we'll use C as a notation for consumption. So the total of all the consumer expenditure in one year, this is what we call consumption. So for instance, can you tell me like how much are your monthly bills? So let's say, for example, you spend like, let's say 100 on an electricity bill, let's say $20 on water bill, maybe $25 on a cable and TV. Let's say you spend like $100 on gas. You spend like 700 on rent. Let's say you spend $1,000 on groceries. So let's say if you add up all your consumption or all your monthly expenses, let's say you found that you spend like 2,000. I'm just giving just any number. So let's say you spend 2,000. So how much is your annual expenditure? So you simply multiply 2,000 by 12. So this will give you like 24,000. So if we add so this is the total annual consumption expenditure for one person. If we add all this consumption for all American people, so this will give you the consumption expenditure in US for 1 year. Okay, so this is what we mean by consumption. Okay, the second part of GDP is business. So business do what? Do investment. So investment expenditures. So let's say Dell, which is an American company. So if Dell starts invest in a new factory, let's say in Illinois, and then let's say they spend like $25 million to start a new factory in Illinois. So the 25 millions will be considered as a part of investment. Again, getting back there, like I want to remind you the definition of what I mean by domestic. So it's they initiated investment in Illinois, which is part of US. So it's going to be counted as part of the investment component of the US GDP. So far explained the consumption expenditures and then the investment expenditures. Okay, what else? So the third part of the GDP formula is government expenditures. So as you can see, so what are the sources of income for the government? They get taxes. As you can see, they get taxes from the business. They get personal income taxes from consumer. So what the government do, they get the taxes from the consumer, they get taxes from the business, and they use these taxes to spend it on the economy. What do you mean by government expenditure? So let me go back here. So what are the examples of the government expenditure? So we have like federal expenditure, state and local spending. So government expenditure, like they spend on the science, education, on the public schools, on the infrastructures, on the defense, on the military. So all these are counted as a part of government expenditures. Okay, so let me go back here. Okay, so here we have investment, consumption, and government expenditures. The last part is export and import. So for the business, they produce, so let's say, for example, let's say Dell, let's say the manufacturers Dell computers, and they export it to Japan, or they export it to France or Germany. So the exports, so these are the exports, will be part of the US GDP. But the import, so let's say a business, a private, let's say a business in US, they import some shoes or some textiles from Indonesia or from China. So these textiles are not manufactured in US, they are manufactured, let's say, in India or China. So it's not going to be part of GDP, US GDP. That's why it has to be deducted from the US GDP. So we have X minus M. So let's go back here. Okay, so this is the formula which I was just explaining. So again, so let's see the definition. Household consumers, all the personal consumption expenditures. So it includes goods and services. Um, uh, what about, so this is C and this is E. So this is the investment. Investment, it can be fixed investment like non-residential fixed investment and residential fixed investment. So non-residential, it includes spending on structure, equipment, residential, so they include construction of new, spending on construction of new homes. So this means like if someone like construct a new home, this will be in 2020, this will be part of the investment part of the US GDP. I already explained the government spending, so this is G, and then export is X, and import is M. Okay, so we end up with this final formula. So consumption plus investment plus government spending plus export minus import. Okay, so let's see an example here. Um, so here in this example, I'm giving you different accounts, and you are supposed to use this account, these different accounts, to find out the GDP using the expenditure approach and the income approach, which I didn't explain it. But let's focus now on the expenditure approach. Okay, so let's write down the formula here again. So GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Yes, you have to know this formula very well, as I said, because this is an important formula. Okay, so let's see the consumption of fixed. So let's see the consumption, how much the personal consumption expenditure. Okay, I'll give you some time to think about this. So the consumption expenditure, as you can see, here I'm giving data on personal consumption expenditure, net foreign income factor, transfer payments, rent, consumption of fixed capital, this is depreciation, social security, interest, exports, dividends, compensation of employees, taxes, personal taxes, corporate income taxes, corporate profit, government purchases, net private domestic investment, and personal saving. From all these different accounts, you're not going to use all these accounts, but you are going to use only whatever you need. So let's find first which one of these accounts is C, which is the personal consumption expenditure. Okay, so let's see. So this is the first one. So the personal consumption expenditure. So this is 245. So here we have, and then let's see the investment. So here there's a tricky part here. So let's see where the investment here. So the investment is, so let's look for the investment here. So this is the net private domestic investment. Okay, if you go back to the definition, let me go back here. Okay, what do you see here? It's gross private domestic investment. I didn't say net. I'm saying gross domestic investment, not net domestic investment. So let me put here. So gross domestic investment equals what? Equals, so the gross investment equal, okay, net investment equal gross investment minus depreciation. Maybe it's not clear on the slide, so please make sure to write it down. Let me give an example. So let's say you bought an equipment, as you can see here. So equipments are part of the fixed investment. So if you buy an equipment for, let's say, 10,000, okay, so I'm gonna put here 10,000. And equipment has been depreciated by 1,000. You use this equipment, so that's why it has been depreciated. So the net investment equals 9,000. Okay, but the tricky part is what? Which part will be included in the GDP whenever we measure the GDP? So the definition is clear. It says gross domestic investment. So be careful about this. So this means, so net investment equal gross investment minus depreciation. So I can write it by a different way here. So the gross investment equal, just move the depreciation to the left-hand side. So equal net investment plus depreciation. Okay, so gross investment equal net investment plus depreciation. Okay, so I'm gonna use this formula here. Okay, so here, this is, you have to put the gross domestic investment. Okay, so as I said, so it has to be the net plus depreciation. So as you can see, let's see where this is the net private domestic investment. So which is 33 plus how much of the depreciation, the consumption of fixed capital. Okay, so you have to know that depreciation, another name for depreciation is consumption of fixed capital, which is 27. So plus 27. Okay. So if you add 33 plus 27, this will give you what we call gross domestic investment. Okay, now let's see G, the government expenditure. So it should be given here. So where's government expenditure? As you can see, this is 72 here. So this is 72. And then plus export minus import. So this is the net exports. Okay, so whenever you see, again, this is tricky. So whenever I say export only, so I mean X. But when I say net exports like this one, so it means export minus import. So this will be 11. Okay, so if you add up, so we will find the GDP. So again, so 245 is the consumption. Net investment plus depreciation, this gives you the gross domestic investment. 72 is the government expenditures, and 11 is the net export, or the export minus import. So this is how you find the GDP. Okay, let's see another example here. So, which is how do you find the GDP? again. So again, I'm going to write the formula again. So GDP equals C plus I plus G plus X minus M. Okay, so see here I'm not saying let export, so export and import, so export and import. So this is X and this is M. Okay. Government purchases, so this is G. What else? Personal consumption expenditure, so this is C. What about investment? As you can see again, so net private domestic investment, okay, is 52.1. So you have to add the depreciation, so plus 11.8. Okay, so let's write down here. So consumption plus investment plus G plus X minus M. So consumption, personal consumption is 219.1 plus, again, I said investment has to be the gross private domestic investment. So the net investment is 52.1. So this is 52.1. And we have to add back the depreciation, which is 11.8. This gives you the investment. And then what about the government expenditure? How much the government expenditure is 59.4. Plus the export, which is X plus 17.8 minus 11.8 with the input. Okay, we find the solution here. So the final answer will be 3.7. Okay, this is how do we find out the or measure the GDP using the expenditure approach. And this concludes my video. Thank you so much and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.